Hi everyone, great to have you back. Alright, so this is a follow-up video from where we left off. I was able to show you guys application context and how you can call it within a web context and a non-web context or a static context, right? And you see it works beautifully, and we wrapped it up where we actually did this amazing bit. I showed you guys how to call the application context. I showed you guys how to basically implement it. Spring provides a safe way, which is the application context aware. I actually mentioned this. If you're just joining, I would advise you take a look at the last video to see this in action. All right. So in this video, we want to start looking at, or we want to look at the aspect I told you guys about when having a monetary application. So I will go ahead and create a new class. I'll call it monetary service. Monetary. Okay, yeah, that's monetary service. All right. Then I'm going to use my RC component. I believe we've been able to see that it works, right? It pretty much works. So why shouldn't I? And let's select for J to bring in, so to be able to log, right? Then I'm going to implement command line runner. Implement command line runner. All right, and you know why? So that we can basically see some things happening immediately. Okay, so let's do some operation, right? Any operation. So I'll just print log log.info. Log.info, I'll say doing some complex monetary stuff. So I'm doing some complex monetary stuff. I think I should probably not use command line runner. I'm just thinking about it. So we could call it service directly. Let's just call it method. So I'll just say method that returns a big decimal, right? I'll just say do complex stuff. Yeah, I think this will be better. Do complex stuff. All right. So I'm gonna do complex stuff, and I'll just log. So this is practically what you have in a real life scenario rather than command line runner for bootstrapping or initializing. So we'll have something like this, and you're saying, and I'll just return big decimal of 1. So I'll say doing some complex monetary stuff. All right. Now, by default, every bean created in Spring is singleton. Now, how do you define that? To define that is as simple as this. It already comes by default. But for those who want to know what is happening under the hood, this is what is happening. You have something called a scope. You have that scope. Please always ensure you look at the annotation where it's coming from. Spring Framework context annotation scope. Then you have singleton. I think it's singleton scope. I want to use so that I don't have to rename. So it's as simple as just saying. Singleton, right? Singleton. But I prefer not writing words, right? I don't enjoy writing words. If there is a constant somewhere I can use within an application, I like to always use that. Take for instance, if you enjoy, let's say you're doing some form of a web call, let's say REST template is calling another service, right? I would rather prefer to use something like authorization. I rather prefer to use something like this. As you can see, right? You see, if you look at this, I rather prefer to use this rather than typing it out myself. So as much as possible, it's a good habit to get into. Try to see if the words you're trying to type already exist somewhere in the application. If it does, either from the base library or somewhere you've defined, it's better you do it this way, right? So it doesn't have any performance impact. It just makes your code kind of pretty, pretty structured. So if you're calling this multiple times, you can always call once constant. If you can't find it, you can just create a service or a util class, define it somewhere, and call it everywhere you intend to use it. So the same thing I want to achieve here. So I'll take this out. There is something called, I think it's called scope underscore singleton. Yeah, so this is what I was looking for. Scope underscore singleton. So I'm going to bring this in. So we have this bean definition scope. So let's look at what is within it. So if you open it up, you see this calls this configurable bean factory dot scope singleton. And if you open it up, you see just points to singleton, right? So you see where it's coming from now. So that I'm going to place in here. So this is all that there is to it. This is default. This is default. This is basically the default. So for you to see that it basically is called once. So what we'll do, let's bring in the constructor and say monetary service and just log something. Just say monetary service in it, meaning I'm initializing it, right? So this is me initializing monetary service. So when you call this, it's expected that this is basically logged for singleton. All right. So how do we test it out? Let's pick one of our service. I think we've played around this a bit. Let's pick another. Let's pick my custom service. Okay, we'll be using this guy, so pretty cool. So let's come in here. I'm just going to place in some log to differentiate everything we've been doing so far. I'm just going to put in some, just going to put this in, something to just differentiate. I'll just place this in so we can see that that's a separator we have in there. Then I'm going to put a space, right, so that it just differentiates everything. All right, so you can see that, oh, it separated it a little bit, right? Better still, I can just make it a print, right? So I'll just say south, yeah. So this I will do. What am I trying to do? So that it clearly defines the line in your log statement, right? It's not advisable to use this. Always use the logger. I'm just using this to basically show off a particular detail. All right, so now that we've done some separation, so let's call our monetary service. So I'm just going to replace this. I will inject my monetary service. Monetary service. All right, then I'll just do monetary service dot do complex stuff. All right. So if you say monetary service dot do complex stuff, let's watch out to see what would happen and to see what is logged. So let's run this application. All right. So can you see? You see, monetary service is doing some complex stuff. So you have it there. So this was the space I created and doing some complex stuff, right? So that is basically it. Somebody might be saying, but I thought this should basically act as the last one. Well, it should basically act as the last one, but Spring does not guarantee you that. In Spring, there is something called a filter, right? If a bean basically exists within a filter, or should I say if a filter exists on the same level as a filter, Spring does not guarantee you the order it will run, which service will come up before the other, but you can control it. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. You can control it. So for us to control it, let's make this my service that does this cool stuff. Let's make it come last. So let's order everything we have so far. So I'll come in here. Spring provides you this handy annotation called at order. Right? At order. Yeah. So you have this at order coming from Spring call annotation order. This guarantees this is the first one that would run. All right. So monetary service, I want it to be last. Let's make this guy number 2, and let's make this guy that does this are bit. Okay, let's make monetary service. Okay, this is not a component. This is not a command line runner, so it's fine. This guy. Okay, we have one more here, right? Yes, we have one more here. So let's make this guy number 3, and let's make this guy number 4. So let's run this and see what will happen. Can you see? You see the order changed? That is the beautiful thing, guys. Spring Boot basically does a lot of things for us, right? So with this order, we've been able to change which command line runner comes before the other one. What is the usefulness? I like to create unique cases. It could be a case where you have some bootstrapping you need to do. After doing it, probably loading some data into the application. However, before then, you want to ensure that some property is already set. So you could create a command line runner that initializes before the other using the order annotation, do some work, then ensuring that has already completed, you can then call the order and making the order greater than the first one, because the lesser the order number, the higher the priority. I'll go over it again. The lesser the order number, the higher the priority. All right. So that basically ensures that we have this set. So we can see this is just happening right now. So why did we call this do complex stuff? Let's go back there. So we have this do complex stuff. It's happening here. So what if I call this twice? What would happen? Please watch this carefully, guys. Please watch this carefully. If I come in here, remember, I have this doing complex stuff, right? I have this guy. I have this monetary service where I'm logging, I'm basically doing the login, and then I'm doing the complex stuff, right? I'm doing the complex stuff. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check this out. Let's go in here. Let's go in here. All right, guys. I had to take a quick pause to quickly attend to something. Okay, now back to where we were. So you see, now if we call this twice, I think this will basically defeat the purpose because I was trying to use the application context. So let's use the application context. This application context here, yeah, and let's use it to call. Let's do context. It's not good to copy, guys. However, let's just make so call the monetary class. Then let's get this out here. So let's get this monetary bean. I'm going to call it monetary bean. Then let's do dots do complex stuff, right? Dot do complex stuff. So let's take this out. So I was just trying to illustrate when you call a service twice, what happens? We want to see what's going to happen within the IOC. So I'm going to call this twice. That should be okay. I'm going to call this twice, right? So on what I did on a Mac, it is Command D. On Windows, it is Control D. Place it on, you do a Control D, and it will just duplicate it. So with this, so let's run this and let's see what would happen. So if I call this, now let's watch out. This monetary bean, this constructor, let's look for it, right? Let's look for this guy. So if I do this, you can see there's only one appearance, which is monetary init. Even though I called it twice, even though I called this do complexes twice, because it recognizes it's just one. It only has one instance in the whole application. That is why this was not called more than once. Now, based on what we were trying to solve, what if we want it to always happen every time? We want it to get initialized every time we call it. So let's go back to this part. Coming back here. Now let's change this to scope. What is the scope here? So I'll pick this scope prototype. So let's pick this scope prototype. Right? I'll just bring this in also. Just wire it in. Just wire it in. A better way, if you don't want to have this long import statement, you could just basically call the class name, then something like this. Yeah, so you have this. This is also fine. So whichever, right? Whichever. I just wanted to show you an alternative. All right, so it lessens the class name. All right, so bringing this in. So I'm wiring this in now as a prototype. Let's see what's going to happen when I run this again. Remember, I am calling it twice here, right? Remember, I'm calling it twice. So let's see what's going to happen. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. All right. So let's check it out. So if you check it out, what do you see? Can you see monetary? So let's check this out. Let's copy this. Let's paste this here. You see monetary init. If you go down, monetary init. I hope this makes pretty much. This actually makes things very clear, right? It pretty much makes everything clear, right? That the moment you make this a prototype, every time it is called, it is reinitialized. Every time it is called, it is reinitialized because it's possible. Another good scenario could be, I'm trying to paint scenario. Another good scenario could be you develop an application to work with the foreign exchange, and you need to get the exchange rate every time you make a call. It is possible the rate you used the last time has changed as at the time you are making that call. So this would be the best. This will also be a best scenario, a good use case rather, to use scope prototype, such that the moment you call this again, it goes ahead, makes a call to do that and get that for you. Let's simulate that, guys. Let's simulate that. So I'm going to come in here. So let's try to do. So having this here, doing some monetary stuff. Let's try to simulate as if you are making a call. So I'll do a thread. The sleep. Just simulating as if you are making an external call, right? I'll make this. Just make it sleep for like maybe 2 seconds. So 2000. I'll make it sleep for like 2 seconds. Just wire this within a try catch. Add within a try catch so that we don't have to deal with the exception. All right. So this will sleep for 2 seconds. Then within this, I'm going to say, calling foreign exchange service. Calling foreign exchange service. All right. So this is a typical use case here. So you want to ensure every time it runs, it basically calls the foreign exchange service. So I expect that I'm going to see this being called twice, right? Because we've called this twice. And if we were to change the scenario and make this 3 times, I expect it to show 3 times. So let's run this again. All right, with this run, so let's look for it. Let's look for foreign exchange. So I'm going to do this. Foreign exchange. So you can see how many times? 1 of 3. So it's appearing, calling foreign exchange service, calling foreign exchange service, calling foreign exchange service. I hope this pretty much make things very clear, guys. So every time you want to do some form of computation or you want to call an external service where you need it to initialize at real time, you don't want it to have the same instance. This is pretty much what you need to do to ensure that it makes that call. It initializes the bean again and makes that call again and again and again. I hope that pretty much clears things up. Then finally, I want us to look at something very crucial. Sometimes when you create a bean, you want to add in some initial methods to it. So let's go to this monetary bean that we've been using. Let's say we are done with this. And the moment this class has been called, we want to ensure that it closes up. So I can basically do an init, right? I can do a post construct. A post construct means when this class is starting up, it calls this service, it calls this this initialization, it does this work immediately, right? So I'm going to say log.info and I'll say doing some startup work. You want some things to run before this service is fully initialized. You come with a post construct, and at the end of the day, you want to finish up with something. You want to do a pre-destroy. A pre-destroy basically means after this is done, please do this work. So you can call a service. Let's say there's a service that needs to shut down, things like that. You can basically do that here. You have an executor service. You want to ensure that by the time the service is done, I want to remove that executor service from the memory, right? I can do the work here. So this is also, I think they call it life cycle hooks. These are life cycle hooks you can use to start up. When this is started up, you can do some work, right? And when it's ending, you can do some work in here, right? So this is pretty much a good place to run this detail. So let's run this again. So when we run this again, what do we have? So we can see okay, so we have some, So remember we slept for 2 seconds, so that is why we are having all this, right? So it started up, it's doing some work, and we are ensuring that when this is over, it ends the work. So you see doing some startup work, I have my doing some startup work in here, and it does the work that's pretty much necessary. And when this is done, I expect it to call the doing some shutdown work. Okay, let's search for this, what this is being called. Okay, let's see why this is not being called. Let me just look at it one more time. Yes, and this is exactly the reason why. This is exactly what I wanted to show you. You might have wondered, why did we not see the shutdown? The reason is simple. By design, by Spring Boot design, Prototype does not call this at pre-destroy. It can call the startup, but it doesn't call the pre-destroy. This is by design. So meaning, because remember, you are the one who specified it should be Prototype. So you have to handle, Spring can help you handle the initialization, but you have to do the cleanup work. Because you were saying, hey, the complex monetary stuff that I'm doing, it has some peculiarities with it, and I'll handle the cleanup. That's what you're telling Spring. The moment you designate it as singleton, or you don't add the scope, making it singleton, right? It simply means Spring is saying, I am fully responsible for the initialization, fully responsible for the shutdown, fully responsible for the cleanup. But in this case, the moment you actually label it as a prototype, this will not work because you are now responsible for doing the cleanup. How do I know? So if I pick this up now and I come to say my customer service, right, which is a singleton because I don't have scope here, and I put this in here, and let's add in my service to designate it. I'll just say doing some shutdown work for my customer service. So my custom service rather. So if I run this, see what's gonna happen. All right. So you can see this is actually calling. Now, what did you notice? I now have this part where I want to shut down. Remember, so far that the application is up, you have the Spring context available. So what we can do to shut down, so if I click this right now and I shut down, what's going to happen? Watch this out. Awesome. Can you see? Doing some shutdown work for my custom service. And for monetary service, nothing happens. You don't find us. You can just do this and do a search again. If you do a search, you can see this is the only place you have shut down. Right? These are the places you have shut down, and it's only for my custom service. I hope we've learned enough, or you learned a lot rather, in this video. I'm grateful for you being here, and it's awesome for us to explore all these things around Spring Boot. I'll see you guys in the next amazing video.